Chef Michael leaned on the patio railing, looking at the truck stacked up like a row of logs, waiting to be cut. He took another long drag from his cigarette and Phil stripped the cherry from the butt before throwing it away. Looking out over the empty field, he wondered how his other customers were doing. Order! How many does that make now? Chef Michael thought to himself as he turned to open the door. 35? As Chef Michael entered the kitchen, a new star flashed into existence and immediately disappeared. The newly lost guest adeptly steered the small vessel to the open field near the designation point on their navigation. A small white furry face stuck out the door and looked around. The darkness was not a problem for their eyes, but the smell of hydrocarbons in the process of refinement prevented their nose from detecting danger. They would have to rely on sight and sound. Chef Michael had just finished prepping several plates for Philly sandwiches. Buns cut and ready to be toasted. He turned to grab the rib roast only to look straight into the eyes of a giant rabbit, looking right back at him in shock and horror just beyond the kitchen door. The moment seemed to stretch on as neither moved. Both blinked in unison, confirming that the other existed, and Chef Michael slowly raised his hands and began to walk to the door. "I'm friendly. Do you understand me?" Chef Michael began to say slowly. The cute pink nose twitched once, then twice, before letting out a scream that would have woken the dead. Clearing out the ringing in his ears, Chef Michael tried to calm the new arrival, to no avail. The bartender appeared behind him at the same time, as several truck drivers exploded onto the patio in search of the noise. "Canada! Give me your hat paw!" the creature screamed, looking at all the faces surrounding it. "Am I really that drunk?" a trucker said back. Annoyed, Chef Michael shot the drivers a withering look and took a breath, before turning his attention back to the rabbit, whose heart seemed to be trying to beat its way out of the poor thing's chest. There, caught in the fluff, was what Chef Michael assumed was a small translator that had fallen from its long ears. He retrieved the translator he had been given years ago, and placed it in his left ear and indicated to the one the rabbit had lost, presumably while screaming. Seeing as nobody made a move toward it, the rabbit carefully and cautiously grabbed the device and inserted it in their ear. "Can you understand me now?" Chef Michael asked. "Yes. Are you going to eat me?" the rabbit inquired back. "No, we don't eat sentience here," Chef Michael said, turning towards the drivers and motioning them back to their beers. "My name's Michael. Mike if you prefer," Chef Michael said calmly. "And you?" "Tshirt," the rabbit replied. "Better than Harvey," Chef Michael said flippantly. "So I am that drunk," the trucker said before heading back in the door. Tshirt took a while to calm down, but was soon occupying a seat at the bar. Her nose still twitched and her head followed every movement a customer made, especially the guy who kept calling her Harvey. Chef Michael finished the sandwiches, and she almost had another fit as he delivered them to the customers who ordered. "Relax," Chef Michael said in a soothing voice. "Humans are omnivorous, but we don't eat sentience," he reminded her. After delivering the plates, Chef Michael returned to Tshirt and asked, "What's a cute fuzzy thing like you doing in a place like this?" "I was on my way to," Tshirt began. "Dunafar," Chef Michael finished. "Happens all the time. Where are you from, if I may ask?" Tshirt thought about it for a moment and said, "I'm, Rolden, and I came from Vuk, the third colony of our people. You?" Chef Michael made a half frown. "As I said before, we are human, and you're kind of on our only planet." Shock coursed through Tshirt. "You're uncontacted? How?" "About 2 years ago, a few days after I started working here, we had our first visitor. Their name was Goof, and they were from Kabaksi on their way to Dunafar. At the same time, we had a Greyhound bus, a type of ground-based transport, break down with a bunch of hungry cosplayers on it. Everyone assumed it was just a costume until they tried to order. That's when shit got interesting. And Goof handed me this translator so we could communicate. Earth remains uncontacted because we have yet to achieve a reason for most sapient species to notice us. But at least twice a week we have a visitor like you. Some are regulars now, and as long as we convince the drivers and motorists not to say anything, we just keep going on like this, Chef Michael explained, then asked, "Hungry?" Gertrude looked at the menu. "It's all meat, though." "Not everything," Chef Michael said, and disappeared back in the kitchen. A few minutes later, Chef Michael returned with a glass dish with something that smelled wonderful. "A question first, if you don't mind," Chef Michael began. "Can your species eat alkaloid plants?" Gertrude nodded affirmation, and Chef Michael set the glass dish in front of her. Inside was a most colourful arrangement of vegetables in a light red sauce. Gertrude prodded the purple, yellow and green slices before picking them up with her fingers. The sauce was rich, with light notes of sweetness and flavours she had never experienced before. The vegetables were soft but firm, with just a hint of something that tasted like flowers. She savoured every bite until there was only a few drops of sauce left in the dish. "I take it you liked it?" Chef Michael asked. "Do you have more?" Gertrude requested. "At home," Chef Michael replied, "we call it ratatouille. It's a dish from France, a nation here on Earth. This one is my own recipe." "You brought this here?" Gertrude asked, with a pang of guilt. "It was going to be my dinner, but I'm glad you so thoroughly enjoyed it," Chef Michael said. "Let's see to getting you back on the road, shall we?" An hour later, elbow deep in dishwater, Chef Michael replayed the events of the evening. Gertrude seemed overjoyed to receive the map that indicated her destination, Earth, and where she had chosen the incorrect hyperlane. She was a little crestfallen when he asked her to keep Earth as a little secret, and had promised to return soon for another serving of ratatouille. Just another satisfied guest from very far away. Gertrude, lining up with the hyperlane that would lead her to Dinnerfar, thought back to how kind the humans were. Michael giving her the dinner he had prepared for himself made her giggle a little. It wasn't like he would know that such a display was an overture of marriage in her species' customs, but she entertained the idea just a little bit. What would it be like to be mated to a human? She remembered the flavour and texture of the meal, and decided to return when her business was finished. What harm could it do to ask?